Thank you all for joining us for our first season sharing series for 2020. My name is Lala Zhang. I'm the co-founder of Learning Genie. And this first webinar, we're going to reflect on the 1 year of distance learning and continue a successful blended learning strategy to outlast the pandemic. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a webinar we put together by collecting the best practices, resources, and stories from Learning Genie users. And we hope to be resourceful to share these with you. And thank you so much for participating and sharing. And I want to start this webinar with a big thank you all for all you do. And 2020 has been really challenging, but you have prevailed with courage, dignity, and resilience. 2021 will be much better, and because we're stronger together. Thank you so much, and you are our hero and inspiration. Okay, so I'm going to, the reason we're doing this webinar is ever since the pandemic started in March and school was closed down, and Learning Genie have been supporting our users on distance learning, and our users get really creative in utilize Learning Genie's tool to do, to empower distance learning and family engagement. And we feel like really rewarding to support the ECE community. And I'm just sharing some of the social media posts of our users sharing in the past few months how they utilize Learning Genie and how we feel like this tool really make an impact. Thank you so much. And you all have really creative ideas, and we'd love to have all of you share your ideas how we can make it better for everybody. So I'm going to introduce our panelists today and speakers. We have a proud panelist, team of panelists that includes Nikki. Nikki, would you wave yourself? And Teresa. And Christy from Sacramento City School District. And also our team members, we have Morgan here, and she will be doing a quick overview of what's new in Learning Genie in terms of distance learning. And Jerry, also from our partnership team, she's going to moderate the panel discussion. Okay, now I'm actually going to turn over to my team member. Okay, this is a quick overview of what we're going to cover today and what's new in Learning Genie by Morgan and the panel discussion and sharing. And we will have a Q&A session at the end, and that you will be able to ask questions for the panelists live, knowing we have almost 1,000 registrations. So we probably won't be able to attend to your questions, all of your questions, but we're going to moderating the chat room. If any questions, we can also send out some responses afterwards. Thank you so much. And I'm going to turn over to my team member, Morgan, to give you a quick overview of what's new in Learning Genie in terms of distance learning. Thank you.
Thanks, Lala. Hi, everyone. I'm Morgan. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm part of the Education Partnership team here at Learning Genie. I used to be a preschool teacher, but now I came over to the Learning Genie team, and I'm so excited for you all to be here today. I'm really excited to hear what our panelists have to say and everyone else in the chat. This has really been a very interesting year, to say the least. But we are all very resilient, as Lala said, and I'm very excited to bring on the new year. But I'm going to go over briefly what's new in Learning Genie, as well as our all-in-one tool. So Learning Genie, we've been supporting early learning under COVID. We have an all-in-one tool for families and educators to partner together about children's learning. You can schedule and facilitate virtual classroom events, share digital learning resources with families, as well as communicate with families freely without language barriers. You can share your activities and lesson plans, as well as track at-home learning and family observations. We also are very data-driven here, so we have a measurable data dashboard that you can look at with all our different modules. So these are our 4 main components for our data-driven process for program quality. Our portfolios module, this tool enables easy organization of notes and collaboration between staff to produce Quality observations. Our family engagement tool. This enables two-way communication between teachers and parents with over 100 different languages for families to have their parent app translated to. So it takes away language barriers between staff and families. And staff can also share educational videos, video books, and create virtual events and activities for families to complete. Our digital health card and contactless attendance tool, our data health card can be used for data-driven decision-making to create contactless sign-in that can be used during this pandemic. And our attendance tool can be used for tracking on-site and hybrid learning. Our in-kind tool, the last tool, is also known as that non-federal match for Head Start schools. It's a paperless collection of in-kind on our module that reduces potential errors and encourages more in-kind submissions from families. So Learning Genie's dashboard provides a data-driven methodology to guide agencies for continuous quality of improvements. Now, some of our new features I'm going to go over today, super exciting. You can collect at-home observations from families. So if you are doing distance learning right now, you might have already been using this if you're using Learning Genie. Families can contribute notes from their parent app and send them to you, and these notes will actually be directly saved into that child's digital portfolio profile. So that's this is the educator app. You can see a draft from parents is saved. Then teachers can go in and edit this observation and add in their own notes, as well as add in the specific measures for the observation. Our other new feature is our events feature. You can assign virtual events and schedule virtual events for your classroom, as well as for your agency. You can track who RSVP'd, who's going to come to this event. These events can also sync with parent smartphone calendars to remind them. You can also set reoccurring events if you have, say, your virtual classroom on Mondays and Wednesdays with your distance learning families. You can track that. Families can also sign in from their parent app to say that they came, and you can track this attendance as well. So you can track virtual attendance, download those attendance sheets, and you'll receive the families who RSVP'd, their check-in time, and then as well as their signatures if they came into the event. So this is that teacher-generated PDF that you can have for all your different events you have, or virtual classrooms, whether it's a virtual classroom, it's a virtual parent meeting. It can be very diverse. Now, we also have our customized learning media channels, which you might be already familiar with. You can create your own customized learning media channels from different YouTube videos you find, like educational videos. We also have this new learning media questionnaire form you can have on each educational video to send to families. After they watch a video book, it will prompt them with a question that you can create, and you can ask open-ended questions, and this can check for understanding and comprehension after they've watched the video. So thank you so much for seeing our new updates. I'm going to pass the mic over to Jerry. Thank you so much, everybody. Oh, and we also, really quickly, we do have our, look forward to our YouTube channel. We're going to have some videos how to do this too. So stay tuned for that on our Learning Genie YouTube channel.
All right, thank you so much, Morgan. So now that you know a little bit about how Learning Genie is helping the community, I'm so excited to allow you to meet our panelists today. So everyone here with us has so many different roles, even in our audience, just so many people from administrators to teachers. If you're doing just home visiting to fully distance learning, there's so many points of view that we think that we can share with you. And so today our panelists will be sharing their stories and best practices when it comes to family engagement. So before I introduce them and let them introduce themselves, I know this might be new to a lot of you, but if you have any questions directly for our panelists, put it in the Q&A section in your on your Zoom bar. That way we can get to them at the very end and make sure that we answer the questions that you have for them aside from what we already have planned. You can also share whatever tips that you have regarding family engagement, activities that you have. I know some of you shared some beforehand, and we will show some of those later. But if you have any other tips, please feel free to share those in the chat. And then the last thing I'd like to remind you is that all of our panelists are sharing things from their own experiences, from their own agency. So we would love for you to be interactive, but also stay really positive and supportive, because we are at Learning Genie just a good community that wants to help each other. So just to keep that in mind. So without further ado, let's hear from our panelists. So I'll go into each individual panelist here, but if you all could just share a little bit about your role, what the operations are looking like at your agency or within your district and state, and then we'll go from there. So I'm going to start here with Nikki.
Hi, I'm Nikki Gamer. I'm from Head Start Child and Family Development Program, Inc. And our main office is in Hastings, Nebraska. It is currently in the 40s, so we are very jealous of our peers that are in California. We are cover a 6-county area, so we are a very rural program. We have programs, we serve both Early Head Start and Head Start, and we work with partner programs with the school districts.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nikki. I'm going to pass it off to Teresa, who also works with you. So Teresa, if you'd like to give a little info about yourself.
My name is Teresa Hernandez. I'm a home visitor in the agency, as I work at the same agency as Nikki. I am also a parent in the program, so I see the side of the parent and side of the educator. So it's really neat to have Learning Genie in our program.
Thank you so much. And then last but not least, Christy, who's coming to us from Sacramento, also in California. Go ahead.
Hello, I work for Sacramento City Unified School District. I am a preschool Head Start teacher. I never in a million years thought I would be doing distance learning, but I'm trying to make the best of it as best as I can, since we've been doing distance learning since March. And so we're still at it. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, everybody. So we're actually just going to jump right in here. I'm actually going to stop sharing my screen so you all can see us. So let's jump in. So for all of you, I'm probably going to start, let's start with you, Christy. So what have been the unique needs and challenges throughout the year? All of you have such different roles. So between doing home visits versus doing pure distance learning, and then also being on site for some of your classrooms, what have been the needs and challenges?
Well, for the classroom, from the classroom perspective, we've been distance learning the whole year. So first off, getting to know students virtually is really super hard, not being able to engage and have those relationships with preschoolers. So that took some time. Luckily, I had a lot of returning students, so they are, kind of leading them just as they would have in the classroom. But in order to make this go as smoothly as possible, I've been really relying on the parents. So I've had a ton of parent input. I check in with them. I work with not just parents, but if I know a grandparent is their primary caregiver during the day, I have the grandparent's phone number. I try to connect them to Learning Genie. A lot of times the family members don't want that. So I text childcare providers, parents, older siblings, and just bring them all in as much as I can to help me, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Nikki, did you want to add anything?
As Christy said, this all began in March for us, and one day we are going about our business, and then the next, our governor says, "Hey, no more school. You guys need to be done." And so we had to scramble. Thankfully, at that point, we had relationships with everybody, and we had a strong use of Learning Genie, so we were able to put a lot of stuff on there. We still were using quite a bit of paperwork at that time. So we moved everything to obviously just sending out activities and stuff on Learning Genie to our families. We scrambled to create policies, procedures for the home visitors. What does this look like? What should your What should it look like when you're doing a virtual home visit? What should it look like for our teachers when they're trying to virtually do this? So we had to do videos. We did practice videos and put it on our YouTube channel and said, okay, this is what a home visit should look like, or what it should look like when you're trying to connect. Over the summer, we continued to do virtual visits, and the first part of August, we were able to start going out into the home to do home visits again. We started in the fall having children come back to the classroom. And so we have been very blessed that we've been able to keep most of our classrooms in session. Once in a while, we'll have, most of the staff out. So we've had to close that classroom for a couple of weeks. We do have 2 sites currently that are unable to go into the home and do home visits. They're having to still continue to do virtual because they're hotspots. The communities, a majority of the population is positive or being tested. And so the risk dial is very high in those communities. So we are doing virtual, not going into the home. Thankfully, we have a lot of procedures in place, but we're still scrambling. We had to create virtual, and we are doing a hybrid option. If parents don't want us in the home, or if they don't want to send their kiddo to school, then we've changed and modified curriculum. We created agreements with families. What does it look like? So paperwork's changed. How we expect our staff to do their jobs has had to adjust, and supporting our staff. It's just been tough all the way around for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. And Teresa, since you and Nikki work together and you're doing the actual home visits, what kind of have been the major differences? Nikki, you probably see a lot of both, but what have been the major differences in needs between the 2 types of programs?
Well, not being in the home, it's harder to coach the parent, to have that parent interaction. It's harder for the child to engage in the activity because we're just seeing them in a screen. So it's hard, to engage, have the parent engage with their child. And, kids I serve little kids, so they want to explore the technology. So it's hard for them to interact with the parent.
Teresa, you do a mix of in-person and virtual with your students, correct?
Yes.
Okay, how are you kind of keeping that consistent? Since you're doing one-on-one?
With my virtual, we send the activity. So they get to see what materials they need. So it's pretty neat having them virtual because they know what materials they need, and we can make something out of materials I have at home.
Nice. So this is going back to all of you. I know you all kind of touched upon this before, but what have been kind of the biggest changes to your approach in reaching your students this year and accommodating the different learning environment? Does anyone want to start? Christy, you look like you have.
I would just say that this year, believe it or not, I've had to prep so much more because the activities aren't the same over Zoom as they are in person. So it's easier to engage a child, when you have human interaction. Having them on a computer screen, they're little. They don't understand that they're supposed to sit there and listen to you. And there's the noise over the Zoom call, all the different people. I don't want them all muted because what's the point of that? So then it gets a little chaotic. So the prep time has been a lot. I have to have a lot of the activities have to be really engaging, that to the point that they have to be doing something all the time almost. So even while I'm reading a book, I have to have like an activity that is going along with the book. So and they're really short too. Like my story times are super short. So I try to make sure that they know, like, okay, first we're going to read the book, A Rainbow Fish. And while we're reading the book, I want you to look for these things. And then we're going to do this activity. And every day before the class even starts, I make sure that the parents, I try to make sure that they fully understand what's going on. so that as the ones who are helping, that they can at least help, coach their children through it, because really it's the virtual school it's so hard for this age, and keeping their attention it's definitely a task.
Yeah.
But if you prep for it, it helps.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
We're definitely going to get back into some of your tips about keeping them engaged and what you've been using. But something else that I thought was really interesting about what you're doing, Christy, is that you are going from a class size of 6, all virtual, to a class size of 10. So what were the preparations there now that you have to almost double your class size?
Yeah, that all happened this week, coming back from Thanksgiving. So it was a lot of, it's more coaching the parents, because I have a couple of 3-year-olds that are now enrolled, and they're wanting them to sit down. I'm like, it is what it is, where they don't understand this. They've never been in preschool before. So putting them in front of a screen and trying to get to know me is probably not the best. So, and I talk to the parents about, them trying to be the coach, like taking on the role of the teacher and just following my lead. So, and then that's also why I do the morning update. I send everyone out a big Learning Genie blast with pictures of what's going to happen. And it's really reliant on the parents. One thing though, is that as my group is getting larger, I am noticing I'm going to have to break it into smaller groups, maybe do like a really quick story time. Maybe not even a story time, because that's harder for me, actually. Just a really quick hi, sing a song, and then we'll meet in our smaller group later on. But I'm still working out the kinks of that, making them log in and out.
Yeah, which is why we're here, trying to share and see what's working. Is that something similar, Teresa and Nikki, that you're seeing even with your on-site classrooms, like just kind of different enrollment sizes? Are you just kind of capped at this point?
So we adjusted. Nebraska at the beginning of the summer wanted to keep classroom sizes below 12. And so we're trying to keep all of our classrooms at 10, 12 kiddos and capped them at that. We are trying to keep families together. Traditionally, we don't want siblings in the same classroom. We've had to look at our classrooms so that we have our bubbles together, so that we don't have, and if they're cousins or go to the same daycare. So we're trying to balance that. It made determining classrooms very difficult this fall. And then we are trying to, we had to shorten our days. We used to have a majority of our classrooms were full day. And because we have had to have fewer in our day than we've had to, with a teacher, we had to go to a split day. And so we have one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And then we have a couple teachers that are doing like an AM, and then they're doing virtual in the PM or whatever.
Right. Yeah, it is like kind of this ultimate seating chart arrangement game. I'm just trying to organize it all. And yeah, so Teresa, did you have anything to add to that as well?
We do send our our activities through Learning Genie, both in the home and virtually. We try to keep the less stuff we take in the home, the better. So that's been a big change in our program, because we will take something for them to be able to interact with the activity. And now we're like asking the parents to provide home stuff so we could do the activity.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so let's kind of talk about that a little bit, about the communication that you guys have with parents. Starting kind of with how you're using Learning Genie. I know a lot of our audience are current Learning Genie users, but there's also some people who've never seen it before. So how are you using Learning Genie to communicate with the families? Anyone?
I do a daily post
with
I do a post with our activity plans, and then any just notifications quick. Oh, don't forget, we were going to gather, like she was saying, gather this material. Sometimes I'll give them a couple days notice for that. So I really like that I can do batch notifications. one thing with text messages is I didn't want to have a group text, you know, with parents. So this keeps it all separate. And then also we're able to share the learning diary or the learning media that's already there. We know that you guys have approved it and looked through it. So that's really nice, not having to go through YouTube and make sure that everything is appropriate, because who knows what they could put into a rainbow fish book, you know, on YouTube. So yeah, that's
nice. Yeah.
Teresa?
Every day the parents for the classroom, they have to do a COVID screener. So that's, parents have to do that every day before their child comes in. So that's something we communicate. If they don't are not coming to school, they can communicate through that. Home visitors too, they have to let us know they are healthy so we can go in the home. I also, when they're doing the activity, when I'm in the home, I'm able to take pictures. So, and then later when I go back in the office, I'm able to upload it, and it's really neat because they're like, oh, I didn't see myself doing that with my child. So that's how we communicate with them.
Yeah, I think the pictures are so helpful, especially if they are going on site. It is kind of just nice to have that extra touch of you know, this being distant. Yeah. So did you want to add anything, Nikki, as well?
Well, our primary source of communication is through Learning Genie. We've been using it for a few years. We love it. Teresa works in the building, and we recently had an ice storm and we lost electricity for the day. And we sent out a message and she got it like boom, quicker than we had let all the staff know. I had just sent out the message to families that, hey, we aren't having class in the afternoon. It's a beautiful way of not having group texts and stuff that we can send out information. Again, the learning media, having our own channel, we are required to do we're comprehensive, Head Start's comprehensive. So we need to send out information on dentals, on physicals, on mental health, on education, parenting. And so we have found, instead of handing out 364 pieces of paper with each kiddo, we do those learning media videos to share. And I can tell you as a parent, I'd rather watch a 2-minute video than I ignored the paperwork that was coming out. You know, the teachers are required to send out, this is kind of what we're doing this week. Like, instead of doing a paper newsletter, every week we're sending out a blurb about what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And so we've had parents that have said, you know, my husband never paid attention, and now he's saying, hey, did you know that they did this in the classroom? Or did you know that if they read so many books, they're going to get a bunny rabbit in the classroom for in-kind and stuff. And so we find that more parents are willing to look at that little notification than look when they never opened up the backpack. And so this has been a beautiful tool to be able to share information and to have two-way communication. And right. We don't have to find people to translate for us, because you put it in there, you know, and that's huge, because in Grand Island, in our largest community, we have 4 different languages that we serve, and we only have staff for 2, so it makes it very hard. So this is a big selling piece.
Yeah, the instant translation is like something across the board, and there's just so many languages that are popular in different regions. So yeah, that definitely is something big. Something that was interesting also, Chrissy, that you had mentioned was just, you have so many new students, and this is the same for you, Nikki and Teresa. How are you able to get those new students and their families onboarded if you were completely distant? Like, how are you kind of getting them in the good cadence of using Learning Genie, or if you're using some other tool to contact them, what kind of has been the strategy there?
I think it's actually been easier to get them onto Learning Genie because they know it's distance. And so they know there's going to be a technology need. When they've been in the classroom, like using Learning Genie in the classroom, it's harder to get them on board sometimes because, you know, they're just dropping off, picking up. But now it's like, no, we need this to be in contact with one another. I'm going to be sending out your daily lesson plans here. And there are still some that, like, sometimes they'll log out of it, and still send them a text message reminder.
Yeah.
You know, I tend to hold their hand a little bit, but it's mostly because it's distance learning. I'm just trying every avenue. So I do use Learning Genie predominantly, but then I will text or email. Email seems to be the least effective for me. And obviously Zoom, we do a lot of like I'll meet with the parents one-on-one too, just to check in and see how things are going with them.
So if there's any one good strategy, just generally getting parents engaged and motivated to respond back to you, what would it be? Teresa, if you want to start.
To have the parents engaged?
Yes, like just one tip just to get them engaged and motivated to keep kind of interacting.
I say play with their child. It's you know, it's no, how do I want to word it? It's fun, you know, and it's for their good and it's educational.
Yeah.
And then sharing that on Learning Genie, like you said,
Yes.
and they want to see it.
Yeah, definitely. Nikki,
I would say
something?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Just building a relationship with the parents. And so a lot of my conversations are with the parents, and then that helps them get comfortable with me. And then in turn, that like helps their children be comfortable with me because they're more into it. So I use Learning Genie, yes. And then I also have all the other methods of like Zoom, the one-on-one face-to-face as well, screen to screen. Just trying to build a relationship with the parents because they will help me build that relationship with their children.
Mm-hmm.
As admin, we've gone to the point where we encouraged it for the last few years or however long we've been on it. And home visitors, it took a while for staff to buy into it, teachers to want to do it. Just because it was one more thing. It's just one more thing they have to do when they are already so busy. And I would agree with Christy that it was when you go virtual, it made everybody have to use it. There wasn't, I mean, this was the one tool that everybody could, it was their go-to. And so we've created, we have parent agreements. And so we just incorporated Learning Genie in there and said, you will use this tool. We have families that can't because their phone doesn't have the capacity to be able to add an app or whatever. And so as a program, we have found that we feel that this is so beneficial to families that if a family doesn't have access to internet, we try and assist them to help them with that, or we'll try and provide a hotspot, or we've provided iPods or whatever so that families can use the Learning Genie so that we can share the information, because we know that our families don't have access to things that maybe somebody else does. One, because of poverty, and another because we are so rural. I live out in the middle of nowhere, seriously, in the boonies in Nebraska, and our internet is so bad, and I pay for the best internet, but it's so bad, you know, so we have all those technology issues. So whatever we can do to help support them, because we believe that Learning Genie is a wonderful mechanism for us to do a lot of different things with family engagement and education.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. I think a lot of people, like when they had registered for our event, they said the same thing. It's just kind of to keep that communication really consistent and strong and build that relationship, because that's when you can kind of rely on each other to keep that consistent. Yeah. So I think what we're going to do now is jump into some of the resources and specific activities that you do now that we have a little bit of an idea of how you're communicating. Let's see a little bit of what you are communicating. So I'm going to actually share the screen to show some of the activities that Christy does with her classroom. Let's see here. There's Christy. Also, before I go to her slides, if you as an educator or admin have seen anything and you want to share your ideas in the chat box, if you haven't already with that registration, feel free to add them. I know some of you have already been doing so as we've been talking, but please keep adding them, because we're going to send that all out as well to our participants. So yeah, so I'll let you take it away, Christy, to share a little bit about what you've been doing.
So this is one way that I try to keep them engaged with reading books is I give them sequencing activities to do along with the story. So you can do it during the story or after. This specific one, I read the book, but they all had a mini book. It's about this big, and I don't know if you can see me, but they each had a little mini book with them. So after I read the story, then they would do the cutting and go through the mini book and then put sequence the story on the story sequencing page. You can also, I've done it with other old lady books specifically. I love all the old lady books. I played the YouTube video and we paused it during each thing that she would swallow, and then they would do the sequencing page. And they don't all look like this. They're all completely different. There's so many different things out there. A lot of them are free. You just have to find them online. But I try to change it up so it doesn't look like the same thing every single time.
Yeah, this looks great. That's cool. And again, we'll probably, you'll have everyone in the audience, you'll also get the video recording for this. So you'll have a little bit more time to look through this as well. So I'm actually going to go to her next one as well, which is really cool.
This was during Halloween week. We were just, all about pumpkins, letter P. I gave them, these are actually so not the book. I provided them the book on the learning media, which I do that every time. Every time I read a book, I also provide it on the learning media. And then the pumpkin outline and the shape picture or the shape cutouts I provided. I read the book, and in this book, it talks about the sad pumpkin, the happy pumpkin, or the angry pumpkin. So then at the end, I said, well, let's make our own pumpkin. You have all these shapes, but I also provided them with a regular piece of construction paper and scissors and said, or you can cut out whatever shapes you want. Let's make a face. I had some little ones make a Minnie Mouse pumpkin. Then there was the sad pumpkin. Some tried to copy them directly out of the book. Others made their own completely, some filled the whole pumpkin in. So it is, it is what it is. You can sometimes hear the parents like, oh, you forgot the eyes, or you have 3 eyes. And it's like, oh yeah, but that's how they want their pumpkin, Mom, remember? So it's the hard part is actually coaching the parents when you have an activity that they're really into, making sure that the parents let them kind of do their thing with it versus turning it into their own artwork.
Yeah. How far in advance are you sending these materials out?
So I deliver to all their houses. I go to
okay, you personally do it. Okay.
Yeah. I was going to do like a pickup at the school, but then I'm like, I sit at the school for 3 hours and wait. I give them about a window. It takes me about 2.5, 3 hours to go deliver each of the materials. So then it's like, I felt more personal. So I try to do every 2 weeks. I try to prep, and that's why I'm saying it takes like a lot of prep. You have to make sure that everything's ready. And then obviously if I forget something, we just improvise, or I have the parents try to find something in the house that they could, make it work with. At the beginning of the school year, I provided them with backpacks that were donated from our public library that came with multiple books. The library gave them a book, and then I got access to like class sets of books. And so I bought a couple, got some for free. I got some donated. And so we've had a lot of days where we read a book together that's out of their backpack. I also provided watercolors, colored pencils, crayons, scissors, glue, the basics, some shakers, some scarves. So they have basically a whole classroom in a bag.
Yeah.
And then every couple of weeks they have a folder that they add their paperwork or whatever new stuff I give them, or they add it to the backpack.
Oh, very cool. So Teresa, that is, and Nikki, is that something, what kind of activities are you guys also doing?
We have a curriculum, and we try to provide in-home materials. Usually the parents, it's materials that parents already have in the home, but if they don't have them, we will provide them for them.
Mm-hmm.
We use Parents as Teachers curriculum for the in-home for our early Head Start. And so like Teresa said, it's very trying to make a ball out of paper and tape or a wadded up shirt and wrapping it up. So we, in March last year, we did provide things like crayons and paper and tape and And for our classrooms in March last year or through the end of the year, we did very similar to what Christy's saying. We would run out actually every week. We would plan for the following week and we would take materials out, and we're a smaller community, you know, and so it wasn't that hard for that classroom to go hit their 18 children and drop off. And we were doing a lot of food distribution at the same time. So we were dropping things off. We did change curriculum this year. We used to use OWL in the classrooms, and now we use creative curriculum. And so we are doing the cloud-based with our virtual kiddos from the classroom. And so again, it's very, very much trying to use materials from the home to do the activities, but we still are handing out materials once a month. We try and replenish the paper, the colors, the scissor, those type of materials, and we send those out to the families.
Yeah, amazing. Great. I mean, I see so many like other amazing ideas, and a lot of people are agreeing with what you guys are saying in the chat as well. So we'll come back to a lot of that, but I want to move on just because I know we are going fast on time here. So the next topics that I kind of want to go over, and this is something that we've seen just across the board. I think most of the schools that we've talked to recently, they are having concerns about the social and emotional health, not just of the students, but also staff, of course, because they are teachers are the gateway to all these students. So how are you supporting both students and teachers and the families during this time, mentally and physically? Nikki, do you want to start?
I sure can. So we already have a behaviorist on staff that goes in and supports classroom teachers and in dealing with behaviors of kiddos. So she's expanded that role to be supportive of staff and other needs. And then we used some of the CARES money and Quality money last year and expanded the hours that we contract with our mental health consultant so that she's available for staff. We remind them we have a strong employee assistance program, the EAP program. They offer 6 free counseling sessions. So we are continuously referring our staff there. We are trying to do supportive activities. We have a mental health day coming up where they get paid and they don't have to be in the building for that day. So we're trying to do a few things to support staff so that they can support families. We are doing a lot of referrals for families because we are seeing and we're using our behaviorist and our mental health consultant to support families' mental health as well as the staff's. Teresa can talk about the referrals and stuff that we do to support the families, but.
Yes, we do assessments in the home, and then that tells us what their needs are. We do we do emotional checklists. Even in the home, parents let us know what they're going through. So, you know, we refer them to resource in the community or resource we have them available for.
Mm-hmm. In the classroom, how are you continuing to run these programs when teachers do get sick? I know that's something that has been coming up just on the staffing side. Nikki, maybe you can speak to this, or if Teresa or Christy, you've kind of experienced this as well. There might not be enough staff to cover all of these programs. What have you been operationally seeing there?
So with our classroom staff, like I said, we have had to close down a classroom here or there for a couple of weeks because we have all the staff out and we're short across the board, or we have multiple children out. So we've closed the classroom down. For the most part, we just try to scramble staff and cover so that, because we're finding that when you have to close a classroom down for 2 weeks, that is a hardship on the family. They're having to scramble to find daycare. They're having to come up with 2 more meals that they were not planning on having to provide that week. They're having to try and find activities and who's going to be there to help support that child when we're trying to do virtual for those 2 weeks that they're not there. So we are trying to keep the kiddos in the classroom as much as possible. On the home visitor side of things, if they have to be out because of COVID, we encourage, if they feel good and they're just have to be out because they can't be in the building because they're quarantined, we encourage them to work from home if they're comfortable with that. So we have a lot of home visitors that do the virtual visits while they're gone for a couple of weeks to continue so that families can still have that contact, because we know that their needs don't go away just because we're not there.
Right, of course. And Christy, is that something similar that you're seeing at your program as well? Like just as far as with providing support and different things like that, is that something that your school is able to do as well?
So for the parents, or for the center base, we haven't been open or anything like that, so we haven't had to do the closing down. I'm just trying to keep it really consistent with the parents for their, are we back on the social emotional support?
Yes.
Okay, so I do notice that virtually, I think parents, they want their child to do the best all the time. And so I see them trying to correct them or make them sit or make them do, and I try to make it very casual. Like, it's okay. We don't have, no participation isn't required. As long as they're listening, they're engaged, they're there. I can't expect too much from them. So I try to help the parents feel that way too, that it's okay if they're not the one that's participating all the time. And then the ones who don't participate as much, I try to do a lot more one-on-one with them. So we'll log in separately so that way we can communicate better, because they're not having to compete with the whole class there. That's been one of the biggest challenges for me, is like, normally in a classroom, the parents are gone. They're not there critiquing, I would almost say, or like trying to monitor their children's behavior, and their children just kind of go with the flow. When their parents are there, or their grandparents, or even, there's a lot of people in the homes usually. So there's a lot of people telling them, oh, you need to pay attention, you need to listen, you need to do this, you need to do that. So I try to keep it really, I try to be super flexible. And then another thing that I do is I tell the parents up front, like in our original parent conference before they start, that attendance is really not mandatory. That if your child if they wake up in the morning and they just do not seem like they're going to be able to sit through this, don't force it. But I still have almost 100% attendance every day. So, and then when they're not, they text me and they just say, hey, we can't today, or usually it's a real reason, like we have an appointment or something. I have had a couple say, no, we're just too tired, we need a nap.
Which is fair, which is so fair. Amazing. All right. So I definitely want to leave some time for the Q&A that we have. I think a lot of questions have come through. So if Morgan, you want to jump in, I know she's been kind of monitoring chat and Q&A, and a lot of things have come through. So if you have anything specific for our panelists, let's hear them.
Hi, everyone, back in. Okay, so I have a few questions. Now, a lot of the questions were addressed, but there was a question, I believe, Teresa, you were going over it a little bit. So the question I have from Tiffany Lee, she asked, what do you suggest for parents who are unresponsive?
So, well, if they're not unresponsive, we actually see what's going on, how I can help them. Ask them for an opinion. How can I make this work for you? Let me know what will work for you. It's not what works for me, it's what works for them. So having that parent input is very important.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And Christy, do you have anything as well?
I think just being flexible with them, and I just try not to have too high of expectations. Don't want it's not necessarily going to be like a classroom. And so then I think the parent, it's not necessarily gonna be like a classroom, because it's not, we're virtual and it's almost impossible to get that. So you have to just be flexible, go with the flow. And I try to let the parents know that. at the very beginning when I do meet with them, so that way they feel more comfortable and they're not like, it's not such a stressful thing for them. But I haven't had anyone who's completely unresponsive yet, so I can't speak to the idea of somebody who just flat out doesn't respond.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good. Thank you for that. And Nikki, what about yourself? Do you have any families who are unresponsive?
At this point, most of our families are very responsive. You know, it happened last spring when they were used to sending their kids to school. And then when we had to close down, we had parents that were like, okay, we're done with the year. And we're unresponsive at that time. But since the beginning of the year, everybody kind of knows that this was going to be the new norm, I think. So we haven't seen that. If we've seen anything, it's in our socializations, and we're still required to complete those, and socializations are just more difficult when you're doing it virtually. So we're having to shake that up. If you only have one person on Zoom, it's really hard to do socialize, and so we're changing it up and trying to do an agency-wide socialization. We had our first last night. So we're constantly having to go with the flow, like Christy said, and figure out how we can try and get parents to engage and still participate in those type of things.
Yes, exactly. Great, thank you. Okay, well, that was Tiffany Lee's question. And Lala, did you have any additional questions you saw from the chat as well that you wanted to? Oh, you're muted.
Able to answer all of them due to time limit, but I just pick out a few. And there is one that from Emily Larson. She's asking, what is an emotional checklist? This is related to one of you shared about that.
An emotional checklist is if the parent has concerns on behavior or anger, too friendly with strangers, kind of like that. Are they sleeping through the night? Are they potty trained? Do they receive counseling? So that's an emotional checklist on our agency.
So our mental health consultants, we sat down with her, and when we consulted with her, she had all these questions. And when we were trying to do case management about families, she would ask all these questions, and the home visitors or the teachers might not know, what is their sleep routine, stuff like that. And so we created emotional health checklist so that we can ask these families, what does discipline look like at your house? What does your sleep routine look like? How many hours of sleep are they getting? So we created our own emotional health checklist. So that's what that is.
With Sac City, we use a screener, just a social emotional screener. There's many available. We use the Ages and Stages social emotional.
Yes, we use that as well, and yeah, so.
Wonderful, wonderful. We also have a lot of questions relating to a particular Learning Genie features. Sorry, due to the time limit, we won't be able to answer those questions, but our team is going to compile those questions and put together our answers, either link to our step-by-step guide or link to YouTube videos, and we're going to email to all of you on the answers to Learning Genie feature specific questions. So thank you so much for asking. And also, if you have any ideas or any suggestions for Learning Genie to improve, feel free to send it to us. Thank you so much.
All right, well then I will, did you want to ask another question, Lala?
I think that's all.
Okay, great. So we did compile a couple of little tips from you guys in the audience. So some of them we've already went through. So just using props and puppets to make Zoom class interesting. Make sure the materials are available around the house. If you can't send materials, I know a lot of our panelists said that they're able to deliver, but if you're not, find something that's really common in the household. The other thing is just using sound and movement, song, dance, just to get people moving or to get the students moving. That's been really helpful. Using one activity to cover many different measures if you are still doing all your ratings, making sure that you can kind of do all of that together. This one was a really interesting one, letting Zoom children interact with the children in the classroom. If that's a situation that you're in, that you have both and you're managing both, I think that's really a fun way for them to socialize and see their friends if they haven't seen them in a while. Let's see. Holding virtual workshops and meetings just for parents. So this one is more, so just being able to directly invite them and kind of address their needs. I think that one was something that came up in a lot of your comments to us. Let's see. Being constant and consistent. I think that's something we covered as well. Making everything routine. I think that's something that all parents are doing something different if they're working, if they're not, just making something that's easy to follow. I think that was a good one. Let's see. I love this one about teaming up with another teacher to take anecdotal notes. If you have that capacity for one teacher to be teaching a class on Zoom and another to be actually making the notes for each student, and that's a great one just to kind of keep up and make sure you're getting notes for all your students. And then the last one, and Christy, you mentioned this a bunch of times, just to be flexible and just be okay with it. I think something that we heard from a lot of our users is that kids are so resilient and they're gonna get through this. And if you're concerned, that's normal, but also, there's so many resources and people who can help you out. And let's just know that they're going to come back strong from this as well, as are we. So those are some tips from our audience members. We are closing up our time here, and we didn't get to everyone's questions, but we do have a bunch of other webinars that might interest you as well. So we're going to do one based on COVID specific and how to use data to monitor and maintain your on-site learning environment. The next one on next Wednesday will be around in-kind. If you are a Head Start agency, that's something that we've seen a lot of issues with, of just how you're collecting all of those submissions specifically for Head Start programs. And then next Thursday, we'll be talking more about some of the topics we covered today on family engagement, but more on the side of how you're collecting those ratings as well. If you are doing DRDP or some other rating system, that might be some helpful tips for you. So join us for any or all of those. If you have any questions or feedback, please reach out to us. We're always available and willing to take anything. If there's topics you want covered in the future for webinars, we'd love to hear them. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us. And panelists, thank you as well. I mean, you guys are amazing and it is so helpful. I think everyone really is going to take a lot from this, and yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys, well, we will see everyone next time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Have a great weekend.